Hello everybody, welcome back. Today we start on the leading edges here. Once again, just like the ailerons and the flaps, you only get one depiction and you're supposed to mirror everything. That worked out for the most part, except for the J channels, and I slowed the video down just to show everybody. And I'll explain that more in depth once we get there. You start out with a whole lot of fluting, drilling number 40 holes, wash, rinse, repeat. I have no idea why I left this in the video. Taking off bluing has to be the most boring part ever. I don't even really know why I do it, because like everybody says, it's just gonna get scuffed up like crazy when it goes to paint. But honestly, I expect to fly it for 2 to 3 years before painting it. Yeah, so scuffing, deburring. I think I left most of the deburring out of it just for everybody's sanity. It's already 14 minutes and 52 seconds long. You don't need it to be 25 minutes. So yeah, and then my camera failed on me here, so it's a security camera that I have in the garage. But and I'm pretty sure the date is like a solid month off. But anyways, measuring out the J channels though, I used Trent Stewart's guide on which ones need to be cut down, and I will try to link that in the video. I seem to be roughly 4 to 6 months behind him, and he does a phenomenal job of writing up everything he does. So I'm kind of using that to substitute areas in the plans that are a bit, I wouldn't even say lacking, just it makes it easier for me to figure out what someone else has already done. So here I'm just drawing a line on the J channel, which is where you need everything to match up to drill through the skin. Cleco everything up. The most painful part, I think, is you already know you're gonna have to uncleco the entire thing. Here's where I slowed it down. So what the plans want you to do is insert the J channel, and they say to draw a line that essentially makes a crosshair at the end of the J channel. And so they want you to draw that line because that's the first place you're going to drill through. And while that is correct on the tank as depicted, it is actually the opposite end for the other tank that is not depicted, and the plans do not state that. So the reason why I slowed this down is because it was throwing me for a loop. I couldn't figure out how that was going to translate to the other skin, which you can see sitting at the front tire of my van there. And so I slide this in, I look at it, and the end rib that I'm closest to right now, that rib there does not have an opening for the J channel. So I slid the J channel all the way through. I look at the crosshair. I say, yes, that matches up. And then I look at where it's sitting at the end rib. Okay, it's not pressing on or trying to go through that end rib. So then I bring the J channel over to the other side that also has the crosshair of the first drilling point. I put the end rib there, and I come to realize that That's a middle rib, of course. I'm just making sure that I have the J channel lined up correctly and whatnot. And then I realized that the crosshair that I've put on the other J channel is on the wrong end. So it does not mirror, at least in my opinion, it does not mirror. There is a solid chance I got that completely wrong, but I feel like that part was a bit lacking. You'll cut strips off of the fuel tanks, which I just did. I think I killed off at least 3 or 4 Dremel wheels trying to cut through those. Those are essentially the nut plate attachments you'll rivet them to the leading edge, but then you'll put nut plates on them for the fuel tanks. Currently, I am 2/3 of the way through the fuel tanks, and as other people have stated, and this is the most tedious part right here, is drill, clico, drill, clico, drill, clico, all the way down the J channel. But as most people said, the fuel tanks are very much like the leading edges. The last 3 clicos in the nose, and they're very close clicos on the edge that bends the most. So essentially the top of the leading edge, those last 3 clicos are a pain, absolutely horrendous. I wish I would have watched Scott Stewart's, who works at Vans. He put out a video on the fuel tanks, and while I had watched it, I hadn't paid close attention to the fact that when he builds the fuel tanks, he uses something that looks like an ice pick. And he even says in the video, those last 3 flanges of the ribs on the leading edge, you'll need something to get in there to align them correctly with the holes. And I wish I would have used that same ice pick technique on these leading edges. That would have saved me a whole bunch of trouble. Yeah, anyways, do yourself a favor, buy the smallest ice pick you can find or something along those lines. It'll essentially just help you pull the nose of that rib in alignment with that hole. Because I would stick my hand in there and push, and it did absolutely nothing. On these leading edges, they state that you should start aft and rivet forward, which is contrary to what Scott was doing in the fuel tank video. I don't know, and the fuel tanks don't state in the plans how to rivet the ribs in. So I just did it the same way Scott did on the fuel tanks, but of course followed the plans here on the leading edges. And these are the rivets I'm talking about. These last 2 to 3 are just horrendous on the nose. Doesn't help that I don't have a helper for the most part. Kids are too young to really hold a bucking bar or drive a rivet gun, so just figure it out on my own. This is my paint prep, and then of course now it's all painted. I don't think that people really care to watch me paint. I did do the area where the lights are going to be in a flat black. I really like the way it looks with the fly LEDs. I realize that a lot of people will leave it silver or go white. I think silver is a smart option because of course it's going to reflect, but the way that I was able to mount my fly LEDs. And I think it's OP-38 is the thing that allows you to have an articulating mount, and it's made for the SunX lights. And so I didn't do the SunX lights, but I just modified that. So I went to the OP-38, looked at all the parts, just bought essentially the mount for that and a couple of nut plates. I didn't buy all the other ancillaries with that. So I just individually ordered the parts and then retrofitted it to mount with the Fly LEDs. Fly LED landing light, the 7 stars, I believe it's called. And that came out really, really nice. It allowed the 7 stars to sit up right against the plexiglass, so I'm not losing any light to the surrounding area. So yeah, and I may be wrong about that OP-38. I don't have that offhand, but it's whatever they used for the Sunstar, whatever Vans supplies if you want to buy the Sunstar kit. I just looked at what the part numbers were. And here we go once again with these nose ribs. And you can see the strip that's mounted with the nut plates on it for the fuel tank there at the very edge. I also did a video of mounting the plexiglass to the leading edges. That was quite off plans, because I feel like the plans allowed for there to be a lot of gap in the plexiglass, which a lot of people were complaining about. And so I kind of tried to reverse engineer as to how to keep the plexiglass as tight to the skin when drilling the holes, etc., etc. In fact, it was make a small marker where the hole should be and then slightly offset the hole so it's pressing it against the skin. Came out quite nice. I'm very happy with that part. And here's the start of that. So again, it was just mark the holes, but then drill them slightly aft so that when a screw goes in, it is pressing the plexiglass against the nose. And I mean just ever so slightly aft, because some of them I drilled, I don't know, I'd go half a millimeter. I mean, it was almost nothing. It was tough to even see, but some of them were hard to get in, which ultimately is kind of what you wanted, but it doesn't need to be that difficult. And then you can see I put lines around the edge of the aluminum, and that was where I needed to bend the aluminum down to meet the glass, because while the corners were almost spot on perfect, the aftmost part was still needed somewhat of a bend. I wish I would have run my reamer through there real quick, but and here's the 2 parts. So those 2 openings there is the thing that I bought individually from Vans with a couple of AN bolts and some nut plates. And I just figured out, I just took the 7 star, tried to gauge where it was that it needed to be, Sharpie it, drill the hole, and then put a nut plate back behind there. And as you can see, they sit just right where the plexiglass starts, which I'm very happy about. And even in that video right there, you can see they move up and down. Anyways, hope this helps somebody. See you on the next one.